She came home from work earlier than usual, but there was something off about her. I noticed it before she even said a word. Her hands trembled slightly as she set her bag on the chair, and her eyes, usually so confident, kept darting away from mine. We sat in the kitchen, and I tried to start a conversation about nothing in particular, but the words felt heavy, like they were swallowed by the air between us. "You're hiding something, aren't you?" I tried to joke, but my voice came out softer than intended, tight and strained. She shook her head, but that feeling in my chest didn't leave. For the past 3 years, she had always been open, honest, laughing whenever I doubted her. And now, looking at her, something told me this time was different. I noticed little things, the way her gaze lingered on the photo on the shelf, the way her fingers fidgeted with the ring I gave her, like it suddenly felt foreign. There was something in her smile that didn't reach her eyes, a small crack that set off an alarm in me. I couldn't put it into words, but I felt it in every quiet corner of the apartment. We sat side by side in that silence, communicating through half-smiles and stolen glances. The evening felt ordinary on the surface, but the air was thick with an invisible tension that made each breath deliberate, cautious. It wasn't fear exactly, at least, I didn't think it was, but it held me taut, like a string stretched just short of snapping. Something was coming, I just didn't know what, and I knew, deep down, that nothing in our years together had prepared me for it. We'd been together for 3 years, and most of that time felt effortless. She had this way of making ordinary moments feel warm: coffee in the morning, late-night walks, the way she laughed at the dumbest jokes. I trusted her completely, without hesitation, because she never gave me a reason not to. There was one thing, though: her coworker, Mark. She talked about him constantly at first, but always in a dismissive, almost protective way. "He's harmless," she'd say, rolling her eyes whenever I raised a concern. "Stop overthinking. He's just friendly." And I believed her. I wanted to believe her. I wanted our relationship to be simple, not tangled in imagined jealousies or paranoia. Every time I met him, he was polite, nothing more. He had a charm that was easy to like, but nothing about him screamed danger. And she never hid anything. She included me in casual mentions, laughed at his jokes, and somehow, that transparency made me trust her even more. I could see her sincerity in the way she spoke, in the small gestures that made her herself, the same way she always had been with me. Even so, sometimes I caught myself wondering. A glance that lingered too long, a joke that seemed private, a casual text she quickly hid when I walked into the room. I shook it off. Every time I voiced it, she reassured me with a patience that felt exhausting to argue against. "I'm not hiding anything," she said once, taking my hand, holding it firmly. "I've never given you a reason not to trust me." And that line, simple and honest, became my anchor. I wanted to believe her because believing her was easier than questioning. And so, for years, I did. It's strange how the smallest things can feel like earthquakes when you're paying attention. Sometimes, I'd notice the way she'd pause before answering a question, like she was measuring her words. Other times, it was a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes, a glance at the corner of the room where she'd set her purse down, or the way she'd fold her hands a little too tightly when she was thinking. Little habits, insignificant on their own, but they started to collect in my mind, stacking up like unmarked boxes in a storage room. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it. She was human, after all. We all have moments we don't understand about ourselves. But there was a tiny friction in my chest whenever Mark's name came up. Not rage, not jealousy exactly, more like an itch I couldn't scratch, a question without a clear answer. Still, those moments were fleeting. Most of the time, she was warm, patient, the same person I had fallen for. I'd watch her in the kitchen, washing dishes, hair pulled back, humming something soft under her breath, and I'd feel that comfort again. That trust, that belief in someone else, that rare kind of safety you can't fake. And yet, I started noticing patterns. Casual mentions of lunch with Mark, sudden invitations to group outings that included him, a story that seemed rehearsed, but not exactly. It was confusing, like walking through a fog where you thought you saw a tree but then realized it was just a shadow. I questioned myself, my memory, my instincts. but every time I hesitated, she would catch my gaze, smile gently, and say something that anchored me back, "Stop worrying. It's nothing." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to feel safe in my own life again. And so I did, even as the friction in my chest whispered that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't seeing everything. It started with the little things. A mention of Mark showing up unexpectedly at her apartment one Saturday, described casually, as if it were normal. A gift she said was from a friend that smelled faintly of cologne I didn't recognize. I don't know why these things bothered me so much, they should have been harmless, but my stomach twisted every time I began paying attention without meaning to. How she sometimes left her laptop open with him on a video call when I walked past, quickly closing it with a smile that didn't quite meet her eyes. How she would check her reflection in the mirror before heading out to run errands and seemed just a little too flustered when I asked what she was doing. None of it added up, but it also didn't confirm anything. I felt like I was trying to read a book in a language I didn't know, and yet, she remained utterly convincing. Every time I voiced my concern, she laughed softly, shook her head, and reassured me. "I promise, it's nothing," she said, reaching for my hand, and the warmth of her touch, the steadiness of her voice, disarmed the alarm bells in my head. I wanted to believe her, I needed to, but the friction didn't go away. I caught myself replaying the moments, overanalyzing everything, the way her messages to friends sometimes vanished before I saw them, the way she paused before mentioning him, how she described their interactions with that careful neutrality that felt practiced. My mind began to invent scenarios I couldn't prove, yet couldn't stop imagining. I realized, maybe for the first time, that trust isn't a guarantee, it's fragile, a balance you maintain only if both sides want it. And for reasons I didn't yet understand, the balance in my relationship was starting to tip. It happened one evening when I came home early, just to surprise her. The apartment was quiet, unusually so, and I immediately noticed the faint scent of cologne lingering in the air. My heart started pounding. I followed the smell to the living room and froze. There was a small note on the coffee table, folded neatly, in handwriting that was familiar. But not hers. I picked it up with trembling hands. "Can't wait to see you again." My mind raced. Every harmless lunch, every casual story she told about Mark suddenly felt like a lie. My chest tightened as I tried to recall the subtle signs I had brushed aside, the laughter that didn't reach her eyes, the sudden phone checks. The way she seemed to pause before saying certain words. I felt betrayed, certain that this note was the proof I'd been searching for all along. I confronted her that night, trying to keep my voice steady, though it shook from anger and fear. She looked at me, confused at first, then realized what I had seen. She didn't deny it immediately, which only made my conviction stronger. I didn't want you to find out like this," she said softly. "I thought I had caught her, thought I finally understood the whole picture." But then, she pulled a second envelope from her pocket. My blood ran cold as I read it. "Don't worry about this one, it's just a prank for the office." My certainty crumbled. Everything I thought I knew, the evidence I believed in, was a trick. I was left standing there, staring at her, the note, and myself, realizing that I had been chasing shadows. The line between trust and doubt blurred completely, and in that moment, I understood something terrifying. Even when it seems like you have the answers, you can be completely, utterly wrong. I thought I had dodged the worst when the prank note came, but the tension didn't leave. It grew heavier over the following week. There were little things I couldn't explain, receipts for dinners I wasn't invited to, text notifications she didn't mean to silence, and the way Mark's name kept cropping up, always in that same careful, rehearsed way. Something was off, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. It all came crashing down one Friday evening. I stayed late at work, hoping to clear my head, and when I returned, the apartment was quiet, too quiet. The door was ajar. I pushed it open, and there they were, her and Mark, laughing over something trivial, but their closeness was undeniable. Not playful, not casual, it was intimate in a way that made my stomach twist and my chest tighten. I froze, unable to breathe. They turned, and she tried to speak, but the words wouldn't reach me. In that instant, I realized the years of reassurance, the calm explanations, the harmless stories, they had all been lies. Every casual lunch, every office event, every denial of closeness was carefully constructed to keep me from seeing the truth. I walked out without saying a word. My mind replayed everything, the laughter, the gestures, the subtle excuses. I understood, finally, that she had been hiding the truth for 3 years, building a separate life around a harmless coworker while keeping me in the dark. The betrayal was not in a single act but in the slow, meticulous erosion of trust, a foundation I had never known was shaky. I sat on the curb outside for what felt like hours, numb, staring at the streetlights reflecting on the wet pavement. The world hadn't ended, but it had shifted, subtly and irreversibly. I realized that sometimes the person you trust most can carry the heaviest knife, and you wouldn't even see it coming. The days after I walked out felt like moving through fog. I went through the motions, work, errands, even brief conversations, but nothing penetrated. Everything I touched felt distant, as if someone had drained the color from my life. I kept replaying the apartment scene over and over, each memory sharper than the last. Every smile, every laugh, every "I promise it's nothing" now felt like a calculated mask. I tried talking to friends, but the words wouldn't come out. How do you explain that someone you trusted completely built a parallel world behind your back? How do you convey the mix of disbelief, anger, and hollow sadness that lingers when the person you loved most turns out to be a stranger in your own home? Even now, I catch myself checking for signs, small inconsistencies in other people's stories, in myself. It's exhausting, and yet I can't stop. The betrayal left a shadow that follows me into every room, every conversation. And part of me wonders if I'll ever feel safe to trust anyone again. I didn't confront her again after that night. I couldn't. Talking felt meaningless when every explanation had already been disproven by 3 years of lies. Instead, I retreated into silence, letting the numbness seep in. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't explosive, but it was complete. A quiet erosion of everything I thought I knew, leaving me unsure of how to live with the memory of someone I loved and someone I barely knew. Sometimes, I wonder if the betrayal itself is worse than knowing it was deliberate. At least if it had been a single, glaring mistake, I could process it. But this slow, invisible collapse of trust leaves scars that don't heal, only fade into something colder, something I carry with me every day. Weeks have passed, but the apartment still feels empty, as if her presence left behind a vacuum I can't fill. I walk through the rooms and see traces of us everywhere, the mug she always left on the counter, the little notes I'd hidden for her, the photo frames with our smiles. They feel heavier now, reminders of trust broken, a life I thought I knew that never really existed. I've thought about confronting her again, asking the questions I never asked, demanding the explanations I might never get. But part of me fears the answers. Maybe I don't want to know. Maybe the truth, fully revealed, would destroy me in ways I can't survive. And yet, that same part of me wonders if I should try. If I should hold her accountable for 3 years of deception, or if I should accept that some betrayals can't be neatly resolved. Sometimes, I think about Mark, what he knew, what he didn't, how complicit he might have been. And then I think about us, the choices we made, the lies that went unspoken, the truths we ignored because they were too painful. It's confusing, infuriating, and painfully intimate all at once. I still love her, in a strange, hollow way, a love tangled with anger, grief, and disbelief. But love alone doesn't fix what's been broken. And maybe that's the cruelest part. You can care for someone entirely, yet they can remain entirely unknowable. So now I sit with the question I can't answer. Do you walk away and try to rebuild yourself? Or do you stay, haunted by the knowledge of what someone you trusted could truly do? There's no right answer, only the silence of rooms that used to echo with laughter, and the weight of the truth I'll carry forever.